Well, good morning. Keith Ayers here from Integro. Thanks for coming along today. And the purpose of today is to talk about best practice in debriefing everything DiSC. I'm going to be concentrating mostly on the workplace profile. So that'll be the focus of what I'm doing. In fact, what I'm going to do is take you through how I would typically debrief a group of people who've taken the Everything DiSC workplace profile, and the things that I would do with them to help them understand their profile and reflect on it and come up with some action plans and stuff like that. And so what I'm going to be doing is going to be typically a 3 to 4 hour session. Obviously, we don't have that much time, so I'm going to be skipping over stuff and just explaining stuff. All right. And I would say 3 hours would be the minimum I would recommend for effectively debriefing the workplace profile. Now, the other thing I'd like you to keep in mind here is that if you were to look at the pages in the workplace profile up until page 6, which is the motivators and the stresses page, and then you look at the management profile, and you've got exactly the same things on those first 6 pages, but in management language as opposed to just individual language. Okay, and the sales profile is very similar as well. The first 5 pages are the same. Pages 6 and 7 are slightly different. And the work of leaders profile, first 5 pages are also very much the same. Okay, so what we're covering today and how I would debrief those first 5 pages, which are really the most important pages for understanding yourself, you could use in any one of those profile debriefs. Okay, so let's get started. A brief look at an agenda here. I'm going to start with the whole person concept because that's where I always start. This is not a Wiley concept. This is an Integro model, and anyone who's been through any training with Integro will be familiar with this. Anyone who's been through any accreditation or certification training would be familiar with this, and if you're not, we'll talk about this a bit later, but you can also purchase from us a poster and a PowerPoint slide. But poster meaning a large-size PDF file you can print up and put on a wall and stuff like that. So must always do that. The workplace profile, we'll walk through that. Then the supplement for facilitators. Again, for all of the DiSC profiles, there is a supplement for facilitators. So that's relevant for all profiles as well. The DiSC theory model, obviously that's relevant to all everything DiSC profiles. And again, that's Integro's version of that, approved by Wiley. And again, we have posters and PowerPoint slides available for that. And then increasing effectiveness. How do we wrap up a DiSC session and get people identifying some action steps that they can take to increase their effectiveness? So that's where I would finish off most sessions. And then if you've got a bit more time, we would also include the comparison reports. I'm going to cover that. And I'm going to take you through all of that. And then at the conclusion of that, I'm going to switch into the Catalyst platform and go through the same debrief, only how I would do it in Catalyst. All right, so that won't take too long at the end, but we certainly want to tie Catalyst into this as well. Okay, and so when I cover things like the whole person concept, I can't cover it in the same depth as I would, obviously, if I was doing this over 3 hours. Okay, the whole person concept is basically saying no matter where you go, there you are. All of you. You can't leave part of yourself at home. When your employees show up at work, the whole person shows up. They can't leave part of themselves at home. And so if you're going to be effective in dealing with people, you need to understand the whole person. And this model was developed by Dr. Ralph Colby, one of the founders of Integro. And the concept is basically that there are 4 primary aspects of people. And if you understand these aspects, you'll understand the person. All right, so the most obvious aspect is behavior. That's the thing that you see straight away when you meet someone new for the first time. You can see how they're behaving. There's a lot of other stuff you can't see. And so he came up with the analogy that we're a bit like icebergs. Behavior is the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of stuff underneath the surface that other people can't see. And you're probably glad that they can't see what's going on in your mind sometimes. Okay. Just below the surface, we have the thinking, feeling aspect, which is directly driving behavior. We do what we think we should do, or we do what we feel like doing. Deeper down, we have our values and beliefs. beliefs are thoughts that became a fact. All right. I believe this to be true. It's true. I don't question it anymore because as far as I'm concerned, that's truth. All right. And I make my decisions based on those truths. All right. It affects my thinking and feeling about what's important to me. Okay. And then at the bottom of the iceberg, we have needs. And in terms of using DiSC, and the reason we use this model is that DiSC is a needs-driven behavioral model. People behave the way they do to satisfy psychological needs, which are at the bottom of the iceberg. Okay. Deep down, people often are not aware of what their psychological needs are. They just react in a way that will satisfy those needs. Just like if you're hungry, you eat. Okay, you have a need for food, you eat. You have a need for water, you drink. Okay, and so I have a need for recognition. You'll do something to attract attention. All right, you'll behave in a way that will satisfy the need. Okay, and that's what's powerful about DiSC, is it really helps people to get a better understanding of what their deep-seated psychological needs are that are driving their behavior. Okay, now at this point in time, I would typically go into an introductory video. This is in the facilitator kit, and if you don't have a facilitator kit, would strongly recommend that you get one, because apart from the introduction video, there's other activities, and I'm going to cover some other activities towards the end briefly, just to tell you about other activities you could use to extend that half-day program into a full day. Okay, so let's dive into the workplace profile. Okay, and this is talking about the workplace profile, but it's true about all DiSC profiles basically. If we're going to increase effectiveness in relationships, you need to understand yourself. And the DiSC profiles spend the first 5 pages focusing on you, right? And then we start turning our attention to others and starting to understand others' behaviors and their priorities and their needs. And then we use that information to build strategies for more successful interactions with each other. And that applies to the workplace profile, to the management profile, to the sales profile, etc. Okay. All right. So cornerstone principles. In every profile, there are some cornerstone principles. I'll just expand that a little bit. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this because I'm sure all of you have a profile of some sort and you have your cornerstone principles there. The 2 most important ones are the first 2, right? All DiSC styles and priorities are equally valuable, and everyone's a blend of all 4. And your work style is also influenced by other factors. There's more to you than DiSC, okay? And now in Catalyst, in the workplace profile section of Catalyst, they're the only 2 cornerstone principles that are referred to. The other 3 have been left out simply because Catalyst is designed for people to go into and learn about themselves as soon as they've completed their profile to some extent before they come to a training session. Okay. The other couple of things about this is that DiSC measures 2 dimensions of personality, control and affiliation, and we'll see that when we get into the DiSC theory model. DiSC does not measure skills and abilities, which is the reason why it's not designed for selection. Okay. I know that there are DiSC profiles around people sell as a selection tool, but it's not designed to do that because it does not measure skills and abilities. And obviously, if you're employing someone, you want to know what their skills and abilities are. And while they have their own range of selection tools that are validated for that. And then the last thing here is DiSC is a tool for dialogue, not diagnosis. Okay. We're not diagnosing people. We're creating a tool for having more effective dialogue with each other, and I think that's an important thing. The last thing, while we're on this, is common misuses, right? Misuses of DiSC is stereotyping. Say, oh, what do you expect? She's a D, right? Well, that's stereotyping. That's saying all Ds do this. Well, it's not true that all Ds do the same things. They might have similar behaviors, but they can also adapt and use different behaviors. And the other one is excusing behavior. I can't help it. I'm a D, right? I'm not choosing to pick on Ds or not. I could pick on my own style, which is S. And, the behavioral style is not an excuse for poor performance or inappropriate behavior, ever, because we always have the opportunity to adapt and behave appropriately. Okay. All right. So let's dive into the profile. This is where I would dive in with a group of people and say, okay, now we've given out your profiles. They've all got their printout of a PDF file in front of them. And we turn to page 3. And the 2 things we're going to point out here, the first one is that little box that tells us what our DiSC style is. So this is my profile. This is where my dot sits, and you can see it squarely in that SI area. Okay, that's helpful sometimes, because if the dots say on the line between SI and S, I might not be able to tell by looking at the DiSC map which one it says me, but my little box there will tell me whether it's SI or S. Okay, the second thing we're going to look at there is inclination. And that's the last sentence in this box I've just highlighted. Your dot location is near the edge of the circle, so you are strongly inclined and probably relate well to the characteristics associated with this style. Okay, so there are 3 levels of inclination: a slight, dots close to the center; moderate, halfway out; strong, out towards the edge. No good or bad with this, just different degrees of, and that influences the degree to which people actually use the behavior. So someone who's a very strong SI style like me will be more obviously an SI style than someone who's close into the center. So other people might not find that it's easy to pick up someone's style if their dot's close to the center. Okay, and don't get confused by flexibility. The fact that your dot is close to the center does mean your comfort zone will flow over into the other styles a bit more, but it doesn't mean you're more flexible. Flexibility is an attitude. It's the willingness to adapt. All right. Yes, there's the ability to adapt too, which is versatility. But the DiSC profile does not measure flexibility. Okay. And then we will go to your dot tells a story on page 4, and give people time to personalize. So tick the things you agree with, put a cross on things you disagree with, and underline 3 things that really leap out at you as being most accurate. All right. Now, at this time with the group, I would break them up into probably 3s, depending on the size of the group. If it was a fairly small group, maybe in pairs, and get them to share their DiSC style and share 1 or 2 of the 3 statements that you underline. So I'm going to go back to that for a second. And you can also use the same process for debriefing an individual in a coaching environment. So you give them the profile, you get them to page 4, you get them to personalize it, and then you go through it with them. All right. And it says here, and you probably have a fear of letting people down. That you underline that as being something that was really important to you, Keith. Can you give me an example of that? All right. So getting people to reflect on things and discuss them is really key to them getting a better understanding. All right. You'll see there's a couple of crosses there too. And you may refuse to deal with negative information even when it's important to you to do so. So I disagreed with that. And then we're going to come back to this when we look at the supplement report later. We'll see how that can help us to understand some of the things we disagreed with here on page 4. But they're the kinds of things that you would pick up on and get people to talk about. If you've got the time to get them to talk about more than a couple of things that they underline, you might get them to talk to each other about, give them another 5 or 7 minutes or something in their little groups to talk about things they disagreed with, or anything else you want to get them to talk about. Okay. All right. So once we've done the page 4, we'd go on to page 5, and that's where we introduce the priorities. The priorities are words around the outside. On the left-hand side is a typical profile with just 3 priorities, an I style, and the priorities are automatically allocated as the 3 closest to your dot. So enthusiasm's the closest, followed by action and collaboration with the I style. All I style people will get those 3 priorities. All right. The one on the right is my profile, and I'm an SI style plus action. Okay, so you'll see on the action priority at the top, it's bolded like the other 3, but it's striped shading, not solid shading. Okay, and so roughly a third of people get 1 additional priority like that. It is possible to get 2 additional priorities, and only 3% of the population get 2 additional priorities. Having 5 priorities is no better than 3. It can be more confusing if you've got more priorities. I'm not sure which to choose. Okay, so that's just the way it is. Okay, and so when you get into the priority section of the profile, which is page 5, again, you get them to personalize it. All right, and we're going to have another discussion in just a moment, but you'll see that my taking action priority is the last one. And the other thing I'd always draw to people's attention when I'm debriefing this, if anyone that has an additional priority, make a note of the language there. So you see in the first line of taking action, it says you also appear to place a high value on swift immediate progress, a characteristic that is unusual for the SI style, right? So this is personalized to you. It's not just a standard. It's a standard paragraph of people, obviously, that have the SI style who get taking action. But it's not just you get a standard taking action priority. That's paragraphs worded differently from someone with a DI style who has action as their number one priority. And then motivators and stresses. And again, we ask them to personalize that. And so you're aware, if you've got an additional priority like I have on action here, you'll see the last two motivators, getting things moving and initiating change, have nothing to do with my SI style. That's the additional priority. And likewise, the last two stresses, moderating your quick pace and working methodically towards long-term goals would be a stressor for me because of my action priority. So people with additional priorities also get additional personalization in these motivators and stresses. Okay, so and then we would go into another breakout. All right, so and if you're doing this online, you can do breakout rooms to have these discussions, and that works fine. But if you're in a classroom, put them into small groups again, maybe the same people who they talked to previously. You could maybe split that up a bit if you wanted to. Okay, but it's important to give them time to discuss these things and think about it and give examples and stuff like that. And like if you ask people to, you know, I've got making a positive difference in people's lives was the one thing I chose as most accurate in terms of a motivator. Can give me an example of how that plays out in what you do. Likewise with the number one stressor. Okay, the word stressor sometimes throws people a bit, and they say it's not really stressful for me. Okay, so it's not stressful, but do you like doing it? No, not really. In other words, there is a bit of stress associated with it, not necessarily a big stressor that's going to freak you out. Okay, all right, so let's go on to the supplement for facilitators. Okay, and if you're not familiar with this, then I'd ask you to get familiar with it. If you've got any DiSC profile, you can generate a supplement for facilitator report for it. We automatically generate both the profile and the supplement for every participant that we put through any kind of DiSC training. Okay, and we'll explain why it's important in just a moment. Okay, so the first thing you'll see in the supplement report is the umbrella graph. That's the first section at the top of the page. The DiSC map on the right is not at the top of the page, it's down the bottom of the page, but I'm putting it there because the reason for the umbrella graph is to determine where my dot goes. All right, and in the majority of instances, when you look at the umbrella, you say, oh yeah, that makes sense why that dot is where it is. Now mine's a little bit skewed towards the SI IS scale, which is my strongest score along with S, but I've also got a very strong score on DIID. And so I've had people ask me, well, why doesn't that strong score on the DIID pull your dot closer up towards the middle there? Well, if it did, it would probably put me in the I quadrant or the I style. Okay, and you can see by how I scored on the I scale, I'm not even out to halfway on that scale. It's not that strong for me, right? It's certainly not as strong as SI and S. And so that's where my dot goes, and that's where I'm most comfortable anyway. And yes, I do have a high priority on action, which comes with the DIID scale there. Okay, so that's the whole purpose of the umbrella graph. The umbrella graph has nothing to do with your priorities. It only plots your dot. And the umbrella graph is a plot of the scores you got on each of the 8 scales. You can see the 8 scales around there. All right. You've answered questions on each of those scales, and it's that umbrella graph is plotting how you scored on each scale. Okay, so so then let's go to the second part of this supplement report, which is the unexpected items. This is the most interesting and what people find the most exciting part of it. This is telling me how I'm different from other people who are like me. In other words, I've answered these questions in a way that's inconsistent with my style, so they're unexpected. Right. So and I got a 5 on I can be stubborn. All right. Now, anybody who knows me knows I can be stubborn, but it's not typical of an SI style. Right. I scored a 5 on that. And then accuracy is a priority for me. That's really a C style item, isn't it? And it's not typical of my style. A lot of 4s there. I get impatient with incompetent people and so on. Okay. Now, where that comes from is the program looks to the opposite side of where my dot is. So it goes from the SI scale across to the DiSC scale, where the challenge priority is, and looks for items on the DiSC scale that I agreed with. Agree being a 4, strongly agree being a 5. All right. The DiSC style is really places extremely high importance on competence. So I get impatient with incompetent people is very much a DiSC item. And so I've rated that an agree. Okay, so it pops into my report. And there's room for 10 items in this report, which you can see I've got 10. Not everybody does. And it's going to look for more items. And if it can't find 10 on the DiSC scale, which of course it's not going to, if I just go back for a moment, you can see where my raw score is on the DiSC scale. I didn't score very high on that scale at all. So maybe there's a couple of items I agreed with. And then you're going to look at the D scale and the C scale. So the 2 scales either side of DiSC. So the 3 scales opposite my dot is where those unexpected items are going to come from. Okay, and it pops them in the report. Okay, now how do we use that information? All right, we're going to go back to page 4 actually to see how valuable this information is. So here are my unexpected items, and here's a little screenshot from my page 4. All right. And the first thing I disagreed with is you probably dislike rapid, unpredictable change. All right. I disagreed with that. I actually quite like change, and people probably wish I didn't change things so much around here. And but the other thing I disagree with is you may be hesitant to move ahead with bold changes if you're unsure that everybody's on board. Now, it makes sense that the SI style wouldn't want to upset people. All right. But if you look at my unexpected items, it bothers me when people waste my time. And I tend to want to get things done quickly. And I can be pretty forceful with my opinions rather than being hesitant to move ahead. All right. So the unexpected items are explaining why I disagreed with those things on page 4. All right. And I'll just give you one other example. All right. Here's another screenshot. You may have found you're so accepting you can get yourself into trouble by trusting people who don't deserve it. All right. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's true about me. And if I look at my unexpected items, I tend to be more questioning than accepting. Well, probably not more questioning than accepting. I do tend to be more questioning than I used to be, and I'm not as easily impressed as I used to be. Now, when I look at these things, these unexpected items, I can see how I used to be more, those things would not have been true in the past. All right. So as I've matured as a person, and after 40 plus years in business and running my own company, I've had to learn new behaviors and new skills. And what these unexpected items are additional strengths that you have that are not typical of your style. All right. Dr. Mark Scullard, the research director at Wiley, calls them your superpowers. All right. Because they're not typical of people with your style. Okay. And so typically what we'll find is if you go back to page 4, anything people put a cross on, they're going to find something in their unexpected items that explains why they don't agree with that. And that may help them to understand, that's why I don't agree with that. Yeah, I used to be more like that, but these are more learned behaviors. I learned to be more like this. It's not natural for me. Okay. So that's pretty powerful information, and it really helps people to assimilate the whole profile into, the supplement with the whole profile. Okay. The third part of the supplement report is the priority subscales. And this is my scores on each of the 8 priorities, the words around the outside of the circle. Now, you'd expect to find high scores for collaboration, support, and enthusiasm, because they're the 3 that are allocated because of my dot. All right. And they are, except enthusiasm, not as important, right? Because my I style isn't as strong as the other 2. But I scored 100% for collaboration and support. But I also had that spike on the DI scale, didn't I? And I have a very high priority on action. I like to make quick decisions. I like things to keep moving. And so that's where my shading comes from. All right. Extra priorities with the striped shading appear in your profile when you have an additional priority that's above 78%. That's the yellow dotted line there. All right. So if you've got an extra priority that's higher than a lot of the other priorities, but it doesn't reach 78, you won't get the stripe shading. But if you've got stripe shading, you'll find that. it's at least at that 78% line. Okay, so again, we would put people into small groups to discuss their umbrella graphs, umbrella graph and priorities and unexpected items, their supplement report. Okay, and talk about that and how accurate are the unexpected items and so on. Okay, now remember, this is your self-perception. Okay, so you might think you've got these unexpected items, but other people may not. And I remember we used to get participants in DiSC accreditation to do a profile on someone else that they could debrief after the program with some practice. And there was this one lady who was a D style, and she got her partner, her husband, to do the profile. He turned out to be an S style. And when she read his unexpected item, she said, "Oh, that's not true. He's not like that." And I said, "Well, hang on a second. How would his friends see him?" And she said, "Oh, they probably would see that, you know." So it's good if you're looking at a personal relationship like that to look at your partner in light of how they react with other people, not just yourself. Okay, all right. In fact, she thought he was a D style, but he came out as an S style. Okay, so let's look at DiSC theory. We've got a resource from Wiley called the Everything DiSC Manual, and one of the sections there, it talks about other psychological models relationship with DiSC. And I'm bringing this one up because this is just a screenshot from that manual. And if you haven't heard anything about the interpersonal circumplex, do a Google search on it, because you'll find a lot of interesting stuff. But this is the foundation behind DiSC, in a sense, behind the Everything DiSC circumplex profile. All right. And Professor Timothy Leary, probably more famous for these experiments with LSD back in the 50s and 60s. But he and a few of his cohorts created this model by mapping the behavior of students on campus in terms of how they interacted with each other, interpersonal behavior. I mean, they mapped them against agency and communion, right? Well, agency being power or control, and communion being affiliation. All right, and you'll see the tendency to love, tendency to ignore on the horizontal scale. What's the communion scale or affiliation scale? And on the vertical scale, tendency to dominate or take control, and the tendency to submit or go along with, you know, on the vertical scale in terms of use of power. Okay, so let's look at the DiSC theory model that we use today. And again, as I said, you can purchase this as a poster, and with that will come the PowerPoint slide that I'm showing you now. So on the horizontal scale, we have the need for affiliation. The vertical scale, the need for control. All right. So if you had a high need for affiliation, you're going to affiliate. Low need, you're going to detach. You don't need people to get your needs met. All right. So people with a high need for affiliation get their needs met by other people, being with other people, and people with a low need for affiliation get their needs met by doing tasks or doing research or something that requires concentration, and people are annoying when they're trying to talk to you when you're concentrating. Okay, so you need to detach. And then the need for control is the need to be in control of others. So people with a high need for control have a need to take control, to be in charge. All right, and those with the low need for control do not have a need to be in charge. That doesn't mean they can't be or won't be, but to do that, they would need to adapt and move up the scale and take control. Okay, so this brings us into the DiSC model. All right, that's what's behind it. And I think what you'll find is if you use this, it will really help people better understand why they got the profile that they did. Okay, people are on the right, task are on the left, and need for control on the upper vertical, and low need for control. People adapt to those in control. Okay, and don't want to be in control. The thing is, if you have a low need for control, it's likely that you have a preference for doing the work yourself rather than being in charge of other people who do the work and supervising that. Okay, if that makes any sense. All right, so then in the back of the profile there's two sections of application. Okay, we don't spend too much time in there, and we certainly can't in a half-day session anyway. All right, but there's a handout in the facilitator kit for using this section, understanding each of the other styles. All right, and then there's also the next section, pages 12 to 15, which is adapting to deal with the other styles. And it's 3 scenarios given there when you need to be more effective in communicating with them, when problems need to be solved, and when things get tense, and gives you some tips on how to deal with them. So there's a page for D, I, S, and C for all that. Okay, so that takes us to increasing workplace effectiveness, and this is page 16 in the profile. All right, and you'll find 3 strategies it offers for you to be more effective. All right, and again, there's a handout in the facilitator kit, handout 3.2, that you can print out and give to participants for them to come up with an action plan. Choose one of the 3 that would help you be more effective. And as you can see, well, this is actually not mine. This person's got an extra priority on action, accuracy as well as action, but it obviously a bit similar to mine. Okay. And I think the one that I would probably pick there would be acknowledge problems rather than glossing over them, because I have a tendency to like to focus on the positive. All right, I don't like negativity much at all. All right, and then the back of the profile, you have the personalized style index is a summary of each of the 12 profiles. Comparison with next. Okay, so just quickly through this, and then I'm going to dive into Catalyst so we can see how we can do the same thing in Catalyst. Comparison report, it's free. You can compare any 2 people. Many of you probably know Kelly and talk to her regularly on our team here, who's also my partner, business partner and life partner. Her dot's the white one, mine's the black one. So you can see we're pretty close together, okay? But what's different is Kelly's extra priority on challenge is opposite my dot. My extra priority on action is opposite her dot. Okay, so when we start looking at the continua, which we will in a second, all right, the profile will produce the 6 most significant trait pairs for that relationship. Okay, the first 4 will reflect where you're most different, and the last 2 will reflect where you're most similar. Okay, and then on each of those pages, you've got the discover area, discover where we both sit. Personalize it. What are our tendencies based on where we sit on the continua? And then how do we apply that? What are the potential roadblocks? What are the potential benefits? And what are some tips for working with Kelly? So here's a couple of examples from our report. On the skeptical accepting continuum, I'm off the chart on accepting. Kelly's quite skeptical, which sort of fits with her challenge priority, okay, extra priority. And so we're completely opposite here, okay? And that's helpful to know when I want to get Kelly's buy-in for something, isn't it? All right. And we can sort of dig into the detail and go to the tips, and I've got to be ready with facts and evidence when I'm dealing with Kelly on stuff where I'm trying to get her buy-in on something. Okay. And one more example, outgoing private. And again, we're opposite, not quite as extremely opposite, but I tend to seek out social situations to meet new people. Kelly tends to be indifferent. I wish I'd had this information a long time ago when Kelly and I were first together, and I used to drag her off to networking functions. I love meeting new people, and Kelly hated it, but she didn't say anything at the time. She would now. So, okay, so the last part of the comparison is reflection and dialogue, and coming up with action plans and stuff like that. Okay, Sue wants to do some questions now. Let's do that.
All right. First question is, what is the recommended duration between retaking the DiSC assessment?
There is no standard duration. And I actually was working with a client the other day who came to certification in Melbourne, who had been told by the people that introduced them to DiSC that people should take it again every 2 years. If you take a DiSC profile, everything DiSC profile, focusing on who you are as a person, the results should not change over time. If a person had some significant changes in life, or were in a new role and they wanted to take it again, that's fine, but I would want to make sure that they fill it out again in terms of who they are as a person, because who you are as a person really doesn't change. The retest reliability of everything DiSC is 0.85 average for all 8 scales. All right, 0.85 means there's an 85% chance you're going to get the same result every time you take it. All right, and so Yeah, that's if there's a reason to take it again, but sometimes people want to take it again because they didn't like the profile they came up with. And I'd spend a bit more time on why they don't like it and what other people think about the accuracy of their report and stuff before doing it again, just so they can try to change it.
Next question, are there plans to include the supplement report or the information on it in Catalyst?
Some of that information, I believe, is going to be in Catalyst. And I think we're fairly close to getting to see some of that, but certainly not all of the information. I don't know about unexpected items and that kind of thing. Part of the issue there is that not all everything DiSC practitioners want to use the supplement. We insist on using it with all of our clients, and we really strongly encourage everybody we put through certification to use it with everybody. But we also train them in how to use it properly and how to interpret it and how to get the most value out of it. And linking it back to page 4 with your unexpected items is one of the most powerful things we do with it. And so I don't know of anything specific that's going to come into Catalyst just yet.
Okay, last one. What changes would you suggest to facilitation for an individual rather than a group?
Well, I probably wouldn't use the PowerPoint. I would sit down with the profile and go through the same activities I've done with you here, basically. And if they're going to be using the traditional PDF versions and comparison reports, then get someone else to do it and do a comparison with them. And that's the way we used to debrief it for DiSC accreditation training when we were running our own version of it. As I mentioned earlier, we get participants to do a profile on someone before they come to the program, so that when they have been trained, they can then do a one-on-one debrief with their nominated person after the program with some practice on how to debrief a DiSC profile and debrief a comparison report and so on. So, but the same process basically. Of just Dot tells a story, priorities, motivators, stresses, take them through DiSC theory, just all of that stuff. Yeah.
Sorry, we have one more about, Peter, I'm presuming it's the supplement for facilitators you're asking about. How do you get that information on the unusual components of someone's profile that come with the facilitator's manual for doing individual debriefs? We try and unmute you, Peter, so we can have that question.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hey, Keith, how are you?
Hi, Peter. Oh, good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm going great. I just noticed that you had those, in the facilitator's manual, you had the, I guess where those variations are, the things that you didn't understand, were unusual about your profile in the 8 segments, and you rated against that. If I'm not facilitating with a group and I'm just doing one-on-one, is that information going to be available in the standard report?
The supplement for facilitators is available for every profile that you do.
Okay.
Whether you're doing an individual debrief or a group debrief.
Okay.
So how you get at it is when you're going to print the report in Epic, at the very bottom of the screen, it will say, do you want to print the profile, or do you want to print the supplement, or do you want to print both? Mm-hmm. We always select both for everybody, and it'll generate both the basic report and the supplementary report.
And what's the additional cost for that then?
There's none.
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
No, it's free.
I didn't realize.
Which is why we've been encouraging people to use it. Yeah, there's no excuse.
Exactly. No, I just, as I say, I've been doing it for so long. I'm in auto mode. I hadn't really stopped and considered it. So can you I guess you can go back and download once again, can't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, everybody you've done. Yeah.
I've got a couple I'm doing this week, so I'll do that now. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Peter. All right. Now, just very quickly, because we said we'd be a 45-minute webinar, and we've got 42 so far. And I want to just jump into Catalyst in a moment, but just to let you know that there are additional activities like quick DiSC cards, which are an ideal icebreaker. We've got DiSC in-depth cards, which we've created. pretty much everybody that goes through accreditation with us would be familiar with that. If you're not and you're interested, it's a great little group activity after people have got their profiles. The Galaxy project videos and people reading videos are in the facilitator kit. Great additional activities. The virtual circle is getting everybody in the group to stand up in a circle where their dot is, and so they can see where everybody is in the DiSC map, and then doing some discussion around each style, getting their styles together and so on. There's also the integrated trust model, and there's quite a bit of activity around that, and we've actually got a program called Building Trust with DiSC, which is mentioned in our website. And so if you're interested in any of those, just contact the team, and they'll make sure you get all the information you need. Okay, so Catalyst came out 3 years ago, just after COVID hit. Perfect timing. And there's a Catalyst facilitator kit, and that facilitator kit contains all the facilitation materials you need to facilitate both classroom and virtual sessions for the workplace profile, for the management profile, and for the Agile EQ profile, all in one kit, all right, for $1,600. If you already have a kit, whether that's workplace or management or Agile EQ, you can upgrade that kit to the Catalyst version at no cost, because you've already got a kit, all right? It's a free upgrade. So I'm just going to quickly dive into Catalyst. All right, so this is my Catalyst profile, and I'm just going to walk through how I would do the same debrief. I'll be as quick as I can, but if I go learn about my style, which is the very first thing I can see on my Catalyst profile page, it's going to take me into the information that's on page 2 and 3 to start with, my DiSC map, and then my story, which is on page 4. All right, and if you're going to be debriefing a group, I would suggest what you do is you print out a PDF file if you've got a classroom session with them. If you're doing it virtually and they've got their Catalyst profiles open in front of them, I would get them to print out their own report, and you can do that by, I'll see there's a hamburger menu up in the upper right hand corner here, and I go to download reports, and I've got all 3 profiles in here. So if you're just doing workplace, you would click on workplace and then download the report as a PDF file and get them to print it out and personalize it the way they did with the you would with the PDF file. Okay, I'm going to skip past your colleagues for a moment and your groups down to workplace, and then this is the what drives you section. This is where your priorities are and your motivators and stresses are. So again, you can do the same activities that we did before using Catalyst. And this is where the strategies for increasing your effectiveness are. Those 3 strategies, which are on page 16 in the workplace profile, they're in this section here as well. From there also, we can dive into you and other styles, all right, which is the pages 8 to 11, understanding the D style, etc. The I style, S style, and C style. There's also little videos in here. And if I scroll down, it'll show there are 4 videos that I can watch. So this is stuff your participants have access to if you've got the profile and Catalyst, and a lot more valuable information. And if you've got other members of your team, when I'm in the D section here, Alicia Lowe, our general manager, is the only D style in our team. And so she shows up here and I can go into her comparison with her and so on. Okay. So then the comparison reports, which I showed you, if I were to choose Sue, who's with me here, and Sue is an SC style. And this is what a comparison report looks like. Well, it's not a report, it's a comparison looks like in Catalyst. Okay, so I've just clicked on Sue. I can see everybody in our team anytime I come into Catalyst, and I can, if I'm going into a meeting with someone, I can click on them and it comes up with this. All right, Sue cares about maintaining stability, being consistent, maintaining harmony. Pull her in when I need someone with these skills, ensuring stability, meeting high standards, and so on, creating a supportive environment. And Sue may be stressed by working with unpredictable people, etc. Okay, so don't put her in that situation. All right, and then here's the comparison between us, what our priorities are. Okay, what our similarities and differences are. We've got more differences and similarities, even though our dots aren't there very far apart. And then we have the continua. And again, you'll see we're not that far apart on most of them. until we get down to fast-paced, steady-paced. And then if I'm going to look, when I say, well, how's that affecting us? My tendencies tend to prefer working at a rapid pace. Sue tends to prefer working at a measured pace. All right. So take that into consideration when I'm working with Sue. Okay. So the comparisons and the stuff are all here as well. Okay. And the other thing that's really fantastic about, just one last thing I'll show you, and that's the groups function. So we've pulled a group together for Integro. So we've got a couple of extra people in here. So we've got 11 people. We have 9 who work in the office, and we have a couple of facilitators who work with us as well. And so we can see where everybody sits, and here's some information about each team member. From here, I can actually go into the Your Colleague section, all right, and look at a comparison between us. And I can also go into Group Insights, and here I see where everybody in the team sits on all 8 continua, all right? So we can have some really interesting team discussion around that in terms of how well do you think you fit in that area? How does that affect you? What are some of the things that like for example, we can see that when it comes to outgoing, there's 5, 6 team members who are very outgoing and 4 who are more private. So how does that affect the interactions in the team? Are we aware of that? Are there any issues associated with that? So some really good team meetings. And then there's the new conversation starters, which has just been added in the last couple of weeks, where a team leader who has their team in Catalyst can create a group, and they can come here into conversation starters and say, I want to have a little meeting about getting to know each other better. So we click on that, and it says plan on spending 8 to 15 minutes on each of 3 screens. All right, so get started. And the first thing it brings up is the first continue is fast-paced, steady-paced. All right. And then the discussion questions are, do you agree with your placement? The continue, why or why not? When has being steady-paced or fast-paced helped you in life? When has it hindered you? And how much energy does it take for you to slow down or speed up your normal pace? And how will the team know if you're feeling that stress? Okay, so great discussions. And then if we go on to the next page, we'll see the next continua. And again, 3 discussion questions around private outgoing, right? And then there's one more. So for each of those applications, well, this is just following up on it. So just the 2 continua for each topic. Okay. All right. So let me just pause there and we'll go back to question time. Okay. So everything that you would be used to doing in a DiSC debrief can be done in Catalyst. And as I said, you can print a PDF file. You can actually go in, if you've got a group of people who've done a Catalyst profile and you set it up through Epic. All right. You go into Epic, you bring up those profiles. You can create the supplementary reports from there. All right. And you can also print out or download the PDF files for each participant and print out their reports as a booklet and hand them out in the same way as you would just from a normal Epic profile. Okay. So any more questions?
There are about 4 questions in the Q&A. Let's look at, while we're talking about Catalyst, how much does Catalyst cost?
The short answer is nothing if you have already done a profile, right? So, and nothing if you've already got a kit. So you can upgrade everybody who's done an everything DiSC profile to the Catalyst version profile. All right. The foundation of Catalyst is the workplace profile. As you can see on my screen here, it's coming here. It says, Keith, you've got an SI style. Learn about my style. I'm going to go into workplace. And scroll down. There's my colleagues and groups, but down here I've got workplace profile. So, and then if I go down further, I've got my management profile. And all of my management profile information is in here. And we could do a whole range of activities around that and facilitation around that, etc. But any of the profiles that you've already done, you can upgrade for free. But if you say you have done the workplace profile and you upgrade your traditional workplace profile to Catalyst, it's no charge for that. And as I said, if you've got a workplace facilitator kit or a management kit, you can upgrade that to the Catalyst kit for no charge. And the Catalyst kit has all 3 profiles in it: workplace, management, agile EQ. Okay. So if you've got someone who hasn't done a profile, then it will cost 15 credits, which is the same as a workplace profile, which has always cost, been priced at. And so it's the same price as doing a normal profile. One of the main differences is if you've got a workplace profile on Catalyst and you want to add the management profile, if you didn't do it in Catalyst, it would cost you 25 credits for the management profile. When you do it in Catalyst, it costs you 10. So what I've got in here is a 15 credit profile workplace, a 10 credit profile management, and a 10 credit profile for Agile EQ. Now, if I did all of that outside of, so that's 35 credits. If I did that all outside of Catalyst, it would have been 30 more credits, 15 more credits for management, 15 more credits for Agile EQ. Okay. So it's definitely more economical to do things in Catalyst.
Okay, let's just get back to some debrief questions. How would you handle running a debrief with a team where some people didn't want to share their profiles with others? Okay,
well, the question is, if it's just a PDF file, everybody's got their own little booklet, don't have to share anything if they don't want to. All right. They will be, well, it's up to how much you ask them to share when you put them into small groups to discuss what their style was and things they underlined and stuff like that. I've never had anyone really react against that. I know there have been occasions, and I've heard of other facilitators who've had someone not wanting to share that information. But I think one of the things that I say to people, look, this is a behavioral style, all right? And the reason you behave the way you do is to satisfy your needs. There's no good or bad style. All styles are equally valuable. Refer to the cornerstone principles, all right? But in actual fact, if people who don't want other people to know what their style is need to understand that people already do know. You've only got to observe their behavior to know what their style is, all right? And so it's not like you're keeping a big secret. There's a saying I heard many years ago, that what you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying, all right? Because people can see your behavior, all right? So I think it's important to create a safe space. I don't force people to share anything that they want to share. We do have some organizations and some people don't want to share the Your Colleague section. So for example, I'll click on Kelly here. She's the same style as Sue, SC style, but our maps are quite different, and Kelly has an extra priority on challenge. Sue has one on collaboration, all right? And so, but that's as much as I know about Kelly's profile, right? I can't see her profile. What I can see is where she sits on these continua, right? And if that's not helpful, I don't know what is, you know, to know that, okay, I'm more outgoing, Kelly's more private. I need to know that, right? And I need to not try to push her into situations where she feels uncomfortable, all right? That's just good people skills, all right? So I think that, you know, if people get really stuck and they don't want people to be able to see their comparisons in here, we can actually shut it off. We can go into the menu here down to account settings, and privacy will come up. Okay, privacy, communication, share with colleagues on or off. And if you turn it off, right, then, and I save that, and then I come back to my Your Colleagues, and I've turned it off for me. Back to Your Colleagues, okay, down here. Well, my colleagues are still there, but they're all grayed out. If I click on Kelly now, nothing happens. So I can't see a comparison between her and I, all right? And so the person who turns that off can't see anyone else's information, and just because they don't want other people to see a comparison with them, okay? And so so everybody else will know, everybody else in the team can see that that person has switched it off. So it's something that they need to consider. Now, the other thing is, if I decide after I've switched it off, oh, Yeah, that's a bit silly. I want to share. So I click on share. I don't have to go back into the menu to privacy to do it. I can do it right from here. Okay, so we're now back all live. Okay.
Okay, next question is, do you have strategies on how to support people if they are not happy with their response, which I presume is style? I had an experience where one individual was taken back by their response and it impacted the group.
Yeah, we have a slide that we cover in certification, which was best practices for dealing with people who don't agree with their style. The very first thing I would recommend is to have a look at their supplementary report, look at their umbrella graph, look at their unexpected items. Another thing we would do is on page 4, your dot tells a story, to personalize that. If we probably already personalized it, tick cross question mark, underline things. One of the things that I find works really well is give them a highlighter pen and ask them to highlight all of the things in page 4 that they disagree with. All right. Now, I've done that on several occasions when people reacting to things that are in that report, but I've never had anyone highlight more than 20% of the report. In other words, what they're saying is 80% of it's fine. There's this stuff here that's not me, and it's hitting a nerve. All right. And oftentimes it's hitting a nerve because it used to be true and they've worked at changing themselves and they hated that part of themselves, and now it's showing up in the report again. All right. Because the report is written about a person with their style, right? Not necessarily with all of their life experiences. So yeah, personalizing the report, highlighting things, getting them to ask other people. And, you know, when people are getting defensive in a way like that, then I think there's something in there that's really hitting a nerve that they are feeling very uncomfortable about it. Because the majority of people can look and say, well, I disagree with couple of things there, but most of it's pretty accurate. You know, they're not going to get defensive about things. All right. So, and it's very rare that if they have answered a profile in a way that's come up completely wrong, then that's to do with the way they answered it. All right. Because the profile we know is extremely accurate. Very high validity, very high reliability. And the majority of people, when they read page 4, say that it's at least 80 to 85% accurate, and a lot of people say that's me to a T. It's 100% accurate. So it does maybe require a bit of counselling or coaching to find out what's behind that defensiveness about the report. It's a bit awkward when they're doing it in front of a group and the rest of the group's feeling awkward about it too. Especially if the rest of the group feels theirs is accurate and they're really liking it, and this person's sort of taking up a lot of time arguing against it and so on.
Next question is, have you seen the workplace styles debrief session delivered differently depending on the purpose? For example, focusing on developing personal effectiveness and team building. If so, what would you suggest to consider in terms of a different format?
I still have the same basic format of taking them through to understanding themselves. Pages up to page 6, motivators and stresses, everything, because they've got to understand their own profile thoroughly and what their priorities are, what motivates and what stresses them, have a chance to talk about it, get comfortable with it, etc. Then yes, you can go into increasing personal effectiveness. Depends on how much of that you want to do and in what kind of situations. And page 16 in the traditional profile and what I showed you in Catalyst there, the 3 strategies for increasing development, increasing effectiveness. The program actually, the handout offers an opportunity to work on one of those strategies. If increasing personal effectiveness is more important, you can get them to work on each of the 3 strategies. But reality is they can only work on one at a time. All right. So you can always bring them back for another session. Say, okay, how did we go with that first one? How's that working? Okay, let's look at another one of these strategies. Come up with an action plan for that. In terms of team building, it's one of the most common applications for the workplace profile, and we'll just do more activities in the afternoon after we've covered the first 6 pages or so, and doing more interactive stuff. I think things like quick DiSC cards, DiSC in-depth cards, the Integra Trust model, all of those things, getting comparisons done between each member of the team and each other member of the team. And then having follow-up with them actually meeting with each other team member over a cup of coffee or something, to discuss their similarities and differences and how they could work together more effectively. But I'd still use the basic, remember the 3 steps: understand yourself, understand others, and then how do we work together better? And so that's first half of the profile, the first 6 pages, is where they get a really good understanding of themselves, and through that a better understanding of others in the team and sharing that information around. The group activities in Catalyst there, the conversation starters, a really big step forward for helping teams work together more effectively and understanding how their styles affect the way they work together.
Okay, last one. Paul, you asked a question about Keith's action priority. I might allow you to talk and have that discussion with him direct. Thank you.
G'day, Paul.
Hello, Keith. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Very fine. Thank you. I was just wondering, because you've been doing this for so long and you've got a lot of experience and have probably, even though you talked about not needing to do your profile terribly regularly, you've probably redone it a few times. With the fact that you've owned the business, have you seen that action priority grow over that time, partly because of what you've done as well as your natural style?
Well, no, because when I first had the opportunity to do everything DiSC with the extra priorities, the action priority was already there. Okay. And I was probably 35 years into running the business. But you know, if I had have been measuring it earlier than that, yes, there would have been a time where it would not have been as strong as it became.
Yeah,
so
I just asked that because it's a question that sometimes comes up. Why have I got that? And sometimes I found that I can track back to people's experience and track where.
Yeah. I think there's 1 or 2 members of my team that think it's dropped off a bit and that I should do the profile again.
Thanks, Keith.
That's all right. Okay, that's it. No more questions. All right. Thanks for coming. If any other questions come up, or any time you've got any questions about facilitating debriefs and stuff like that, we had a whole team of people here, as you saw in our group map in Catalyst. Very high concentration in the S quadrant, right? And S stands for support as well as steadiness. So we love supporting people. So don't hesitate to contact Integra, and we would love to have a chance to chat to you anytime. Okay. So thanks for coming. See you next time.